These are the types of things. If they cared that much about food safety, they wouldn't be telling farmers that have been doing this for generation after generation to stop doing things. Now, why are they outlawing raw milk? Why would anybody do that?
Because it's bad for you. Didn't you know that?
So, basically, Jesus in biblical days, did he drink pasteurized milk? I don't even think Pasteur was even born yet, right? I mean,
right.
It was named after the whole process, right? They didn't even know about bacteria back then. They drank unpasteurized goat milk. Did anybody die? Not usually
I'm
from
sure people died, but not from the raw goat milk.
Probably not. And you know what? If we have a population problem today, and now, and only recently have we started having legislation on this planet about not being able to sell or if I want to join a public or private group and sign a waiver, they still will send the police in to shut down that facility because they don't want me to have the choices that God has given me. Well, when government gets that bad, then government is bad. And I tell you that right now. This government is bad, okay? We are no longer in a free society. We are living in a police state, and this government must fall.
It's funny because they're over there saying they're fighting in Afghanistan for our freedom. They hate our freedom. Let's see. There are cameras all over the street.
They're killing that off already.
The people's kids are being fondled at the airport. They're sticking their hands down your pants. They're tapping your phones illegally. They're watching your credit card purchases illegally. What freedom do you have? If you have your seatbelt, you forgot to put on your seatbelt, they give you a ticket. What freedom do you think you have?
Right.
It's an illusion.
Exactly.
You don't have freedom.
And you know what? If first of all, we've already talked about how the mainstream or lamestream media does not tell you the things that you need to know. They're more interested in Lindsay Lohan, drug addiction, than they are, and fashions and sales and things for you to buy than actual news.
That's because it's not popular. It doesn't help their bottom line if you're aware and you need to save. Because they have crap they got to get rid of. And you know what? All the media is the same. It's all corporate owned across the board.
This media is not.
Well, that's true. I don't consider us media. I'm talking mainstream Fox and all that garbage on TV. That's all corporate crap. They're going to entertain you. That's like the local news on TV now. They have people singing for you and telling you what you can buy and what's a good idea. Give me a break. It's garbage. It's all garbage.
And just the pictures of how Black Fridays, salesters are running people over, and when the doors open. But meanwhile, we're buying all this stuff as a country on credit that we don't have.
I got to go back to the chat room, right? Because they say seatbelts are good. Yeah, that should be your choice. In a free country, wearing a seatbelt to protect yourself should be a choice. It should not be Big Brother telling you must.
Exactly. When there's a penalty where someone who is armed from the government, a representative arm of the government, comes over and stops you from moving from one place to another, okay, and tells you that you are now in violation of the law and can remove your right to travel if you don't adhere to what he or she thinks is right for you. Then we are living in a freaking fascist state.
Don't go in my ear.
And this is the problem. Liberty is never lost all in one fell swoop. Liberty is lost 1 inch, 1 millimeter, 1 nanometer at a time. That's how liberty is lost, okay? And it's not to protect me. It's to protect the insurance companies. Easily, this could have been made a much different way. If you get into an accident while you're behind the wheel of a car and you're not wearing your seatbelt, then your insurance company should not have to pay the complete coverage
right.
that you signed on for, because that should have been in the contract with the insurance company. Say, well, listen, since you weren't doing everything to protect yourself, then we do not have to abide 100% by our contract. That should be between the insurance company and an individual. The state and federal government should not interfere in your life if you are not violating someone's civil or natural God-given right, period. That is my response to you. So, it's the problem is that everybody says, oh, it sounds like a good idea.
It's for your safety.
It's for your safety. The other thing is, this is another thing. When the Second Amendment, very, very interesting point about the Second Amendment. If someone commits a felony and they go to jail and they pay a restitution to society and they come out of jail, possibly rehabilitated, they, in many places across this land, are forbidden from possession of a firearm to protect themselves. Okay? Now, on the surface, it seems like a good idea. Stopping someone's right to carry a weapon who has a history of some bad choices. Since when does society punish people after they've made restitution and made payment on society for their bad decisions? We do not remove the right of freedom of expression. The freedom of speech is not removed. The freedom of the press is not removed. The freedom of to worship who you want, the freedom of religion is not infringed upon. The freedom for a fair trial, to the right to not be self-incriminating. All of those rights are intact after you leave jail, no matter what crime you were convicted on, whether it was a misdemeanor or a felony. The only one that you do not get is the Second Amendment. That one is removed in many of the states, possibly all of them. Oh. And it's very easy to think why. Because, felons are a minority. They are a minority. And since our government has changed over to a screwed up democracy, the rule of the mob, then we find that we can remove rights from people because it might be a good idea. We can remove your rights from getting on a plane. We can treat you like a criminal, pat you down for the sake of safety. I think the best thing that they did to ensure the safety of planes is, number one, reinforce the door to the cockpit and anyone's access to the cockpit, and giving the pilots a gun. That was the best and most inexpensive way of dealing with the threat to our airlines, no matter who might have done it.
Right.
And it doesn't involve the losing of liberties. It's funny. Hitler said the same thing after the Reichstag fire, which was, I think, in the same vein. Historically speaking, it was the World Trade Center of its time in Germany to Germans. They were a people who came out of the Weimar Republic very poor, lots of unemployment, a lot of poverty, looking for a charismatic leader to help them and somebody to be on their side. And Hitler was that person. He was very charismatic. He got up there. He made some really fiery speeches that touched the hearts of the German people, and they voted that man in 98% to 2%. So, this was a sweeping election, free election. And then, of course, the Reichstag fire created and set up the conditions to say, well, these terrorists are trying to get us at every step. And it was probably the commies, and it was probably the Jews, and this is what I'm saying, what was being said back then. And it was all their fault. And so in order to preserve freedoms, we must remove freedoms to preserve them. And that is exactly the situation that we're facing here in this country. And it's not just Obama. If you think it's just the Democrats and the liberals, then you're more asleep than anybody else. Because it is the Republican leadership, it is the Democratic leadership. They both support the Federal Reserve System, which is run by a bunch of international bankers, and the corporations are slaves to that banking structure because their business depends on debt and money, and you're spending everything you've got to buy their stuff. So, the George W. Bush should be prosecuted for crimes not only in this country, but crimes against humanity for starting 2 wars that he should have never started. The Mujahideen were funded by the CIA during the Russian campaign in Afghanistan. The Mujahideen became the Taliban, which we also funded. Osama bin Laden was working for the United States government as an agent against the Russians, and so was Saddam Hussein. And we gave Saddam Hussein all the chemical weapons and the weapons of mass destruction that he had. So, if the government wants to be the savior of anybody, they should just get out of the way, because the only thing that the government is supposed to do is make sure that no one infringes upon my rights or the rights of others, and they are a sad failure at doing that. The Constitution has been stepped on time and again, only to give the power elite more power over the people. Slowly but surely, it starts with buckle up, and then we're going to pass a law saying that you can't babysit your neighbor's kid, or else you have to have a license to run a daycare center, because you're not licensed. And we all know what licenses are. Licenses are a way for the government, whether it's state or federal, to get money and get in on a piece of the action. It's kind of like the mob going to everybody's business and saying, you need protection money, you have to pay us, and then
we're going
to bust your kneecaps. Okay? I grew up in the streets of Brooklyn, and I know exactly what that is.